Self-Destruct sequence activated.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Filling on the Self-Destruct Sequence podcast.
Him is me. I'm Morphied. Thank you very much for a second. It is a new year. Happy New Year 2016, and hopefully a wonderful year for Descent. And this is episode 8.
I'm going to try this. Chris Heiser?
Well, yes, a random guy who looks, and a few years later, the DXX Rebirth project was born.
Very nice, yeah. Without DXX Rebirth, the state of the game currently, it wouldn't be where it is today, very obviously. But just go ahead and tell us how you got started fiddling.
So yeah, at the beginning it was actually, I still say it's just a small hobby project of mine. And again, I was switching over to Linux. Was and still am a huge Descent fan, and DOSBox was just not where it is nowadays. And so I came to know these D1X and D2X projects, but they were kind of like stalling on one way or another. I was like, okay, let's repackage them, let's make them at least play them, let's make a few of them. And eventually I started tapping into the source code. I wasn't a programmer back in the day, and I would still not really call myself a programmer. I was just patching it up. I was hacking around a little bit, and things developed really, really organically from there on out.
Very nice.
Pretty much.
You say you're not a programmer. What do you prefer? Would be the way to put it. How do you pay the
So yeah, back in the day, I made I was working as a network technician, but I'm not working as that anymore. For 3 years now, I'm self-employed. I'm doing IT services and stuff like that. I'm doing this more or less as freelancing, but I'm doing it anyway. And basically, getting into game development, where I'm now developing a small game with a friend of mine at GOG, for GOG.com. I met a few amazing people there. Now I'm also doing a game with them. I also did a little bit of a little game, just a rogue FPS. To the audio assurance for another little game. It's called Sub-Level 0. I did the Linux quality assurance. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, cool. Games the stream commonly.
Mostly we're streaming games randomly out of the GOG library. Maybe classics from the GOG library, maybe new releases, or games that are currently on promo on GOG.com. I'm also running a few shows, playing Dungeon Keeper 2 at the moment, and also Free Space right now. Every Wednesday, actually around at should that be, if I'm not times right now.
Got it.
It's around 11 p.m. UTC.
I think I need to podcast on Saturday nights. Huge.
YouTube show as well under the name Memories in 8-bit. And at some point I reached like 3,000 subscribers. I wanted to give some, but I asked GOG, can you want to give away a copy of Tower of Guns as well? Because that just came out a few weeks ago. Gift code, and somehow they must have gotten wind of that video, and eventually they came to me as we have something, we can do that, but we're gonna talk on the stream. I can't work with because I'm a speaker. I could pass year December I'm streaming.
Very nice.
That's amazing.
That's really cool. Just sent source code, of course, to
the audio quality is a little bit dropping right now.
Oh, that's all right. I was just mentioning that the project, originally was just to get it working on Linux, But of course,
Exactly.
we have installers for Windows. Also, it works on Mac as well. Um, and
Yes.
I was just wondering what your input was on how much the project has grown since you started it. Were you expecting this kind of growth, or
Right, so it started out as a port. Were you
Yeah.
expecting it to go beyond just a simple port of what already existed?
Okay, no, in fact, I totally didn't. I was, when I put these just basic Linux installer on my website, I didn't expect like more than 3 to 5 people showing up. And there was like a lot of organic growth there. Like in a month, I had like a few dozen people. And of course, they asked me like, can you do that for Windows? I was like, okay, I can look into that. And the original D1X and D2X source ports, especially D2X, was available for Windows and available for Mac as well. Chris Taylor, who actually worked on the D2X team, made the port for Mac OS. And I was actually in contact with him. He was basically the only person who was still active on the original D2X project. I was getting in contact with him, talking with him a lot. And another guy helped me to test how to get this game built and compiled on Windows because, quite frankly, I was so much into Linux, I didn't even know how to compile something like that on Windows. And we went back and forth between D2X, copied stuff from D2X into D1X. And again, I was just starting hacking back in the day. This was like getting a build environment that works on Windows and on Mac. And it kind of jumbled together. I can barely recall how this all happened step by step because, again, it was more or less of a blur. But I think there was also then like over half a year later, like in summer 2006, when we at least got this game working on Windows. And then D1X was never really had never gotten a Mac port, and we were porting this stuff over from D2X to D1X, and suddenly it was working, and I was like, "Holy shit, we made it somehow!" And yeah, eventually I invited over Chris Taylor to join the Rebirth project because I didn't wanna Bradley Bell, who made the D2X port. I have the highest respects for him, all the highest respects for all the programmers that were involved and are still involved into these projects. I didn't want to drag him away from this, but I asked him, like, do you want to work on this until D2X comes back? We can still put all our changes in a separate folder so it can all be implemented into D2X if Bradley Bell comes back. And Bradley Bell is now also contributing towards Rebirth, and it goes back and forth again between the two of us. He does still a few changes on the original D2X nowadays, just for himself as well. And yeah, we are exchanging stuff, and this is always how I thought this should go, because with Rebirth, I just wanted to do a port that kind of like feels right for my that gives me that same feeling that I had when I first played this game back in 1995. And I just want to have this feeling recreated. Nowadays, of course, it's, with so many coders we have nowadays, there's, of course, compromises and listening to a lot of inputs and listening to a lot of voices, to a lot of decisions. And, but it's still kind of like my vision. At least I try to be that way, and but still exchanging with others so they can do their own thing, just like with retro, for example.
So when you first started out with this Rebirth project, it was about simply getting the ports to function in for each different OS. And then I imagine after that it was a lot of tracking down bugs or
Yes.
stability issues. At
Yes.
what point did you actually start, perhaps looking at the author's intention and realizing, if I recall correctly, there's quite a few funny comments made by the original developers in the source code.
Yes, indeed.
I'm
When did you
laughing
actually
'cause I've seen
start
some of those.
do you recall any of the first things that you started to think, I bet I could fix what they coded back in 1994? What were some of the things you worked with there?
I remember one of the first fixes I did, and it's kind of like a funny story. I was noticing that after you loaded a save game in Descent 2, like all the bots and objects in the level were actually getting a lot darker, as if they were not affected by lighting as much. And I thought I fixed that until years later I noticed, like, okay, now I just made them a little bit brighter, but they were still not properly being affected by the level light, because the level light computation is kind of strange in Descent. You have like this static level lighting, and then you have like dynamic lighting added on top of that. And since Descent 2 has like these blastable walls and blastable lamps that you have in the level, that makes the level a bit darker again. There's like some fancy computation going on, and when the game actually loads a save game, there was things done in a wrong order, and that was messing up this whole thing. So I found that bug as one of the first things, but I fixed it completely wrong, and it took me about 2 years until I fixed it right.
Oh yeah. So of course, in addition to Rebirth, we also have Retro as well, which is kind of a.
Yes.
I don't know if it would be accurate to call it a fork of the source.
Yes, pretty much, pretty much.
Has there been ever any talk of perhaps unifying the code base?
I personally, I would definitely say Retro has, again, I personally am a big fan of, having the freedom to choose. So if I think Retro definitely has its place among the Rangers, because it's basically a Descent made specifically for the Rangers. I think that's at least my impression. I am definitely adopting a lot of the stuff they have done, and Dracona was also very friendly in providing a lot of explanations, even explanations that went way over my head. Again, I'm not a learned programmer, especially in terms of homing missiles, which is a very, very sour topic for me, since I think in those 10 years in which I worked on this project, we had like 5 or 6 approaches to finally get those buggers right. And in fact, we're still testing them. I have now exactly the same code as Retro uses, and there's people that still swear it's a little bit different, and we're currently investigating where that comes from. And there were also things like the so-called sniper packets that make hitting in multiplayer more accurate, and a lot of other stuff like spawning with specific weapons, duplicating power-ups when the level starts and stuff like that. We have taken over these things, and as long as I think it's there's all these ideas definitely have their place, I think, and if they really fit into the game. I mean, multiplayer is something I want to keep this game as original as possible, but multiplayer is something that goes on for so many years now, and there's such a competitive community there, where I just say I'm more a single player guy, so I think you guys know better than me by now, and so I'm at least trying to be open to that, and we take in a lot of these suggestions. We are also thinking of adopting a real spectator mode at some point, where you can properly spectate in through matches. Actually, and I cannot really take all the credit for that, because since 2 years we have another coder on this project, which name is just 2 letters, KP. He did a lot on this thing. He rewrote a lot of this code. He made it a lot more fail-safe. He added a lot of output. He made it a lot less error-prone. That the code is less. Now I don't remember the English word for that. So there is still stuff in Descent where things are just expected to go right, but if they don't, very bad things can happen. And he tried to really go through all these functions and rework them. And he also unified the source code. So we still have Descent 1 and Descent 2, but they all come from one source code base. We don't have 2 source code bases anymore. He also did a lot of C++ in this stuff to abstract the whole code. He made a lot of performance improvements, and he also wrote a spectator mode, which will be implemented after the next release is actually published, which we are currently ironing out the last few tests among the homers, of course.
Very nice. Do you have a planned release date for that?
I wanted to do several. I wanted to do the official 10th birthday at first, the September. I wanted to do Christmas. I wanted to do New Year's. But in all honesty, I know this sounds like very much like Duke Nukem Forever, but yeah, again, we're currently ironing out those, those last tests with the homing missiles to make sure they're really working exactly like the players want them to be. We also currently figured out that there is like apparently weapons stop you a little bit more than they used to in the game, and this is again where we go on in those little nifty parts. Like, did we make the code a little bit more accurate, and now it's actually working as it was written? And
yeah, I think I see what you like. How it was written. Yeah, we got the author's intent, but
yes,
did we change our experience as we remember?
And this is exactly what we're currently tackling, because we just made a small code optimization on this stuff, and suddenly even flares can bring the ship to a complete halt.
Oh man, yeah, I know that's one of my pet peeves with Descent. I mean, even if you're running away from someone and someone pings you with the Vulcan behind you, it slows your ship down. It's like, it's so weird.
Well,
you're like trying to turn
push me forward, darn it.
Yeah, you're trying to turn into a corridor and you end up hitting the wall. It's like,
and
whoops.
so I was making like a lot of tests about that. We have like a future pilot is he's like the best beta tester I could have ever wished for, and he tested with me like for hours, and we are like, okay. We did like these tests. Like, I would say like 25% of flares are stopping your ship, while the rest 75% are not stopping your ship that much. And now after this code change, it's like 100% is stopping you completely. I was like, okay, where does it come from and why does it happen? Yes. And this is like sometimes where, where you really, we still investigate this, but this is like one of these kinds of things where we were before. We're saying like, okay, we have now restored, or we have like completely recreated what Parallax intended to do, but it's so gameplay changing that we have to do something about that. That we have to change it back. Yeah. And those are always the things that are the most complicated to do.
And I have to add here, because I'm not going to get too technical, but having poked around in the Descent code, I will say that the people over at Parallax probably did not have the best coding standards ever. I mean, there's so many things that they could have done better and differently, but it is what it is. I mean, it was a great game when it came out,
yes.
and still is today, but having to go in and put stuff on top of it and trying to figure out what they've done, that is a monumental effort to begin with.
Yes.
So it definitely
now you
can definitely appreciate what you're going through there.
Thank you very much. Yes. But now you gotta imagine that I kind of learned programming on this engine. So what does it say about my skills?
Exactly. Very much. So you said earlier you were pretty much tailoring it for your Descent 1 single-player experience. Is that something that you play often, or just something to go back for nostalgia?
I have to admit, I don't play this game as much as when if I could go back into the past and would tell me that, like, okay, you're working for this for 10 years and you played this game for just a handful of hours, like really for yourself and not just for testing, I would say, no, fuck this shit, I'm out of here.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah. Sometimes the joy is in the work.
Indeed.
Yeah, I gotta say it's, and of course also my my approach to this whole game has kind of changed, because right now it's like sometimes I start up the game and it's like Neo, where you see behind the matrix, and you just see the code in the work, and you see like, okay, this bot is doing that, but it's actually just because it was programmed like this, but actually it was programmed like that, but it behaves like this because the code isn't working right. So these kinds of things you see then.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, very good. So yeah, do you have any future plans past this next patch coming up? Any big things to add to it?
Yeah. Now there is in this version which we're now publishing, of course, there is a lot of bug fixes in there. I was when I started to read the multiplayer, which I really do because I think aside from the AI, because many comments which is really well thought out. Oh, there shouldn't be a packet lost somewhere in the internet. They didn't really count on that to happen. So they say about this, and there's a lot of things I would like to do, like having power up objects be observed and by well, mostly by the host, and making sure that there is no inconsistencies. Two players collecting one flag, disappearing, stuff like that. There's stuff that go very slowly in that, just to make sure that everything is first working before I start to break it again.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Um, Mouse overrun buffer coming in anytime soon? Is the
Excuse
mouse?
me, I have
The mouse buffer overrun work that I believe there was some retro work on how the input from a mouse in some
yes.
circumstances. Any chance of that getting rolled into the next
Um,
release?
We actually have added something like that by
Very
now.
nice.
It's written a little bit different. So I'm not 100% sure it works exactly the same. It's like the time that the mouse buffer overrun takes, where the ship basically still works from the overrun
Mm-hmm.
from the mouse. It can be that this fade out is a little bit different. But again, this is where we take in the feedback, and where we definitely want to see how you guys feel about that, and see how how we take things from there. Especially since we are in fact planning on doing much more frequent releases from here on out. Also, it's like just making a few bug fixes, pushing this out, because we have now many more helping hands, people that can compile Windows versions and make sure that all the because making a new release was always a huge coordination, because I had to speak with people, Matt Taylor making the Mac ports, and somehow getting the Windows versions compiled, which was always a pain in the ass, to be quite honest, to get this environment which I had set up. And a future pilot is actually doing this on a daily basis now, and he has like a cross compiler set up with which he can compile these new testing versions really quick, and a lot of more helping hands, so we can push out new releases much more frequently. At least that's the plan. And so we can hopefully adjust much easier to feedback and get things fixed in the process of new releases. So
Nice.
yeah, there is mouse overrun buffer, and it's gonna happen. We also have the joystick under calibration
Ooh.
is now in there.
Ah, yes.
And I have reworked the keyboard ramping for all the keyboard players, because there are some feedback about that the ship is spinning, and not really spinning up a little bit, but the original game already had a default keyboard sensitivity, and you couldn't really reproduce that with my approach of keyboard ramping. And I have now completely restored that, and also adjusted it to, because the original keyboard sensitivity was unfortunately bound to your game's FPS. And so I have like the sensitivity steps aligned to 60 FPS, 30 FPS, 15 FPS, and so forth.
Very
So
nice.
that this is, you should always have something where you can say, okay, I can recreate my personal experience, which I had in the sense. So it feels more like what I had back in the past. At
Yeah,
least we hope so.
I think if we had keyboard ramping back when I restarted on the DCL, I think I would have been kicking Morphod's tail around a bit more often.
It's very interesting to hear. Trying to recreate the experience that you recall when you played Descent back in the day.
Yeah.
That's that's actually pretty significant, because hey, I was playing back on a PR 233, which was really a 187.5 megahertz Cyrix. And let me tell you, you had to pedal that thing really fast to get 30 frames per second. And that could be why everything always kind of felt a little bit off, as maybe I was just getting older. Well, maybe it's because I don't quite remember it that way.
Yeah. Of course, there is always a lot of things that will never perfectly scale to your FPS, and there's like a lot of newer games that don't do that perfectly as well. Especially like in collision detection, the physics of the game. I have read so many articles about that, and there's always this kind of border where things where rounding issues don't come into account all that much anymore. But usually, if you drive like 10 to 30 FPS, things tend to be like very, very different, and it's hard to recreate this properly. So there's probably still a few things in Rebirth that work different on terms depending on which FPS you drive. But as soon as I notice some of that, I usually try to hunt this down and see what I can do about that. And it's sometimes it's really like, oh, I'm just sliding along this wall, this takes about 5.5 seconds on 30 fps. Now how long does this sliding takes on 120 fps, or how long does it take on the 1000 fps? So like
Man.
my debug build actually goes up to 1000 fps, so I can test exactly these extreme cases and see if that actually works. And it's a work where you can busy yourself literally for months to hunt down that, and eventually you have to settle down to it's working good enough.
Very nice. One of the other things I wanted to ask you, of course, we have Descent Underground coming out pretty soon.
Yeah.
How has activity on the Rebirth project changed with the announcement of the Descent Underground project?
I have to say, for me, actually, it didn't really change much. I have to say, I definitely have seen more people. The download rates jumped up a little, so Descent Underground definitely, I think, brought Descent back on plan again. And I definitely look forward towards Descent Underground, but first and foremost, I look forward to it as an observer at first, because I know it has a huge focus on multiplayer, and I am a single player guy mostly. And so I'm definitely waiting. So the last thing I actually heard was that the single player will be there, but it may come like in steps, as far as I remember. And I will definitely observe this. I've recently seen a small trailer on YouTube where there was like where they were, I think, driving on the moon and suddenly discovering something.
Yep.
And looked really, really impressive to me. I just gotta say, and I'm a strange guy like this. I would have loved to see this as a real reboot and not so much as a prequel, because I cannot really. And I had the same problem with Descent 3 already, that I have problems imagining all that stuff happening in the same universe, because Descent 1 and Descent 2 were so simple games where the universe wasn't as fleshed out, not as detailed. And now seeing such a great game with so much detail, it doesn't really fit all that well together in my head. But I definitely look forward to it, this game, and I really look forward to see what they do with it.
Very nice. Yeah,
Definitely.
it's interesting. You mentioned that the trailer that they had.
Yes.
It almost had this. You almost felt that there's like going to be this jump scare or something coming at you at
Yes.
any moment in that trailer. It's very well done. Whereas like the trailers, I mean, the Descent 2 trailer didn't even have a human model. They didn't start doing that until
Exactly.
Descent 3.
Exactly.
So yeah, definitely I think one of the allures of the Descent 1 and 2 games is the simplicity of it. I mean, even Descent
Yes.
3,
Yes.
it's just it's no longer just find the keys,
Exactly.
kill the
Exactly.
reactor,
And
get the heck out.
yeah,
It's
in
entirely different.
Descent 3, you go back to Mars and you suddenly find those mutants living there, flying around in saucer and in basically Mars attack style saucers. And it was like, that's not how I imagined Mars when I was playing Descent 1. Just like
Exactly.
when your head canon meets the official canon, and it kind of clashes together. And this trailer, which I seen, it was like more. I was really reminded of Alien One, where they approach the alien ship at first, where they find the alien eggs. And it's like on in this trailer they had like this rover moving towards this, what seemed like an obelisk or something like that. And it was like, really, I was really having a sort of alien feel to that, and I really, really like it. It's just sometimes hard to bring this together in the same universe of Descent 1 and Descent 2. So Descent 1 and Descent 2 are kind of like my head canon, and the rest is kind of a little bit like expanded universe, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But again, this is
absolutely.
just, in my head like this.
Yeah.
The Descent world was easier to digest when all you had to do was to hate that little squirt in a suit named Dravis.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Anyway, yeah, very cool. Any other shout outs you want to give? Any last words you want to?
Oh, I definitely. What I really really want to do is I again as I hinted on before, I would love to shout out and thanks to basically everyone, people that are helping on my team, mostly Chris Taylor, Matt, who does the tracker right now. He actually wrote. I haven't told you about that yet. We have a new tracker in the works,
Ooh.
which will remember pilots. So you have lifetime stats tracking on that thing, and he's currently implementing that. So and he runs the tracker, which I cannot do on my web server, unfortunately. He does that. He programs it. Said KP, who did all the rewriting, all the people who are testing, all the people who are actually playing this. Again, when I started this like 10 years back, I didn't really imagine any more than 5 people playing this, and suddenly everyone comes there, and of course everyone comes in with expectations that I have to deliver something. Of course, everyone has their own wishes, and I cannot always do that. I always try to please everyone, and that's quite honestly the hardest challenge in this whole thing. So for everyone who has like understanding that this is not the easiest thing to please everyone, that is the best, and everyone who's there, everyone who's playing, everyone who keeps this game alive, because it's not just me coding this, it's also the guys like you who are just still playing this game, and that's where my thanks go. And this is basically where this project was going. It's a community effort. It's not just me. It's everyone brings something in, maybe code or just saying, no, you did something wrong here. It's all these people that make this project what it is nowadays, and I can't thank you guys enough for that.
Very awesome. And
Just curious, do you have any kind of estimate on how many people are using Rebirth? Like, how many downloads do you get when you make a major release?
On a major release, I would say it takes a while, but after a month, it's basically around 2,000 downloads per month.
Yikes!
wow, that is
But
pretty
it's
impressive.
but since we are not on SourceForge anymore, and again, this is unfortunately a licensed thing, but no hard feelings towards SourceForge. They were actually kind of understanding back in the day. I just since the Descent license is not really GPL compatible or free software compatible, and back when I registered the whole thing on SourceForge, they didn't have a problem with that, but by now they really have like this free software philosophy, and you can only host projects that are compatible with that. And they were like, oh right, you mustn't be here with your game, and they were like, okay, you can now back up everything, we give you as much time as you want. They had like, no, oh, you have to go right now. No. And yeah, since that we have less ways to track that. I could actually implement like some sort of counters on my website to track those download rates, but on the other hand, it's just like, everyone who just says, hey, I discovered this, I played this, that's more like these numbers are actually counting for me. But back on the SourceForge days, we had like around 2,000 per month. And I always also expect like on Linux distributions that they create those packages once and host them on mirrors. So that's happens as well. So that's less. So the Linux downloads are always a lot lower, of course, and because of course the Windows user base is much larger. So I'm of course very happy that we still have a Windows version running. But yeah, so it's hard sometimes to track those download numbers. But for the next big release, I hope we gonna have more downloads tracking again. And I know Future Pilot has this installer of his, which we also want to make a more official package now. And he has a small script that tracks the download numbers. And I will ask him how those perform.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I like the one thing I like about it is how you can choose the music to install. And
Yes,
it was kind of
yes.
funny because I got to that point in the installation, and you were mentioning earlier about recreating the original
Yes.
experience. I actually went onto YouTube and listened to each one to
Yeah.
figure out which one was the closest to what I remember, and took that one.
Yes.
So I think that's really cool that that was implemented.
That's exactly the reason why we have all those. I really ask a lot of people, and I encourage, like, you find more soundtrack tracks on the forums, which people have posted, which unfortunately I cannot host all on my web server myself, since I have very limited space. In fact, I haven't, like, no data limit, like volume. They can transfer as much as they want, but I have kind of like a limited space. So I can also not really host like many older versions of the game, since I'm eventually run out of space for that. I will see what I can do in the future for that. But yeah, so there's like a lot of people creating new stuff, creating, or just, an add-on that makes like a DXX Rebirth menu background stuff. I really, really love people doing that. All fan created background, and I really want to encourage that as well. And I'm also very happy that we got, but I forgot the name of. He's like a soundtrack guru, and he made the SC55 renderings with the Roland SC55, which is apparently the device in which the soundtrack was initially created in. And
nice.
it's like, this is like the music was supposed to sound. And yeah, of course, it's not how everybody remembers. So I also keep the OPL3 version online. And eventually, I hope we can get a real music emulation in there. I hope at some point we can do that. That we can really, like DOSBox does it, that you can basically select an OPL chip, or maybe even a Sound Blaster chip, and the game will automatically recreate the music based on that on the fly. We hope we can do that happen at some. I would love to do that if I had the expertise, or I could license-wise implement one of the many solutions that already exist out there. And then I definitely want to do that as well.
Very nice. All right. I think that wraps up the questions that I had. If you had anything else, Morfod?
I guess I would just kind of tie things up, going back to good old games. The work that you've done on the Rebirth project, it's incredible. But just to curious, has it ever crossed your mind just how many sales have actually been enabled of this 20-year-old game because of the work that you put into Rebirth? Because this is now, going through DOSBox. Hey, DOSBox has come a far way, but Rebirth has come a lot farther for this specific experience.
I think until the games were actually removed from GOG, and of course I hope they will reappear very soon again. There were actually I had the GOG page linked a lot on my, if you don't have the game data, buy this, and you can play a Rebirth using the GOG version. And I really love the DRM free policy, so I definitely choose that. Very, very, very supportive. I know by fact that we have a few fans inside the GOG staff. That's also very, easy, because some of the screenshots they actually had on the store page on Descent were actually taken from DXX Rebirth, which I can easily see because, I encouraged quite a few sales. And if also spoke with GOG extra download, as an optional extra download, of course, on their store, like not sold, because I really love that this game is free, this port is free, and it should stay free, but that they could like maybe link it on the storefront and stuff like that. But there's a lot of legal stuff attached to this, and unfortunately it wasn't possible. And now I'm just happy if Descent returns to GOG. I hope very soon.
Yeah. Very cool. All right.
I think that wraps up our questions for our interview. Thank you very much for joining us today, Zico.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
And we also appreciate you reaching out to us. At first, we had you written down, hey, we would like to talk to this guy, and then you reached out to us. We're happy that you're a fan of our podcast, and we'll hope to be hearing from you soon, and looking forward to that new release. Thank you so much.
Yes, no problem. I will be back. If you guys want to have me again at some point, I will definitely be back. And yeah, we will now focus on the next version. We are literally the last handful of commits that we have to iron out, and then it's definitely release time. We are hurrying with that. But again, we put quality over that. If we put something out, it has to better work right.
Absolutely. And we definitely appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Okay.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye bye. Wiedersehen.
Alrighty. So we're going to go ahead and move on. We do have one big piece of news, as he alluded to a moment ago. The Descent series got pulled off of GOG.com not too long ago. Morpod, you still there?
Sorry.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it got pulled off of GOG. I guess somebody was digging around in a filing cabinet in the back room. I guess Parallax still technically exists as a company, and there's something about like 8 years, back years of royalties owed from the sale of Descent. What's
Yeah.
going on there?
So Matt Toshlog posted to the thread about this on GOG.com, mentioning that there's now a lawsuit or some type of legal action, and there's an injunction that requires Interplay to pull the Descent series from GOG.com. Now, we thought that would also get pulled from Steam as well, but as of this morning, you can still search for Descent on Steam. And I'm going to give my honest feedback on Interplay here. They've been in it for the money for quite some time, and I don't claim to know their balance sheet or anything, but they may have higher priorities than to pay royalties when it comes to the money that they're bringing in. So, I fear that this doesn't get resolved, and that we lose Descent. Now, this is a 21-year-old game. There are other games that have come and gone in the past that, and certainly in a lot fewer than 21 years, that you just can't get the game anymore, unless you like pirate a copy or download or buy a box copy from eBay or something like that. Which for Descent is still a valid method of purchase. You can go do it through eBay. But I just have this bad feeling, that Interplay is not going to be very interested in resolving this in any quick time frame.
And that could be quite. It won't be disastrous because this company has shown, this community has shown it can weather a storm in a big way.
Indeed.
But nonetheless, the people who are looking to try to get back into the game, there's not going to be any easily accessible way to get a hold of this title that these people really want to play. And if there's one thing that Interplay absolutely knows, is that nostalgia is definitely selling.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Again, still available on Steam, so you can check it out there if you want to download it. I do believe like even the DCL's new player page is updated to. Pretty much directs people to eBay at this point. There's not a whole lot else to do, so we'll see what happens with that. So I think that does it for our major news this week. So we're going to go on to our community news. Of course, we just talked about Rebirth with Zico, and they're having a new release coming out pretty soon. And it sounds like there's some major stuff in there. That observatory mode sounds really awesome. That
would be the most wonderful thing, because for those who are not aware, to do an observatory style hosting, you have to have a specially made level with uniquely positioned cube types. It's not like modern games where there's an invisible spectator that can fly around the level and watch the action from every angle, and it kind of has this omniscient, omnipresent, view of everything that's going on. There's no God mode or bird's eye view, none of that. There's no way to be in the game without actually having your ship in the game. So specific levels are being constructed, and because they are a pain to make, they reach up against the cube limit sometimes, and just the geometry of some of the levels becomes awkward. There's actually very view limited stadium viewing for different types of matches that are played.
It looks like it's not going to be this upcoming release. It'll be a little bit after, but I mean, the fact that it's even being worked on is awesome. Because for those familiar with the retro line, a pilot that went by the name of Jinx was working on an observer mode for retro before he passed on, and I don't think anyone has picked up that torch since. It would be great to get an observer mode because I mean, uh, take it from me, watching a Descent game in observer mode is so cool because you get to see what both pilots are doing at the same time. You have them both on your screen at all times. You see what they're doing. You can kind of figure out what they're thinking. When somebody gets the jump on someone, it's just like so exciting because they're never gonna see this coming. Pow! It's great. Like the whole Melvin in Take Two. Oh man.
The fact that the game, say a standard shoot 'em up, creates a fantastic spectator event.
It sure does. So it's very appreciative that observer mode will be coming out in that. So
Or at least being investigated. So
yep. To wrap up with the Rangers, the Descent Rangers, of course, they did their Christmas Day, Christmas turkey shoot. It wasn't on Christmas Day. They pushed it back to the middle of the following week. I believe it was the 29th. And wow, this had so much participation, they had to split it into 2 different games, which is really awesome. So kudos to everybody that made it. The winners were, unfortunately, I don't think I have. Yeah, I do have it up, but it doesn't say who won it. So, but yeah, it's a really fun event. And on the back of that, Varen has put out a schedule for the entirety of 2016. There's going to be a new Descent Rangers event every 2 weeks, starting on the 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So it can be every other Saturday. And these are games that they're different modes. So every time you come in, it's going to be a different way to megas, do that out put together, and it's going to be a great year to be a Descent Ranger. Lots of games going to be played.
glad to hear that the organized casual community in Rangers is doing well.
Yep, that's a Descent Ranger. It's they've been over the last year or so. They used to, you had to have a sponsor, and you had to have like 5 vouchers. You had to play a couple of games and stuff like that. They simplified that a little bit to reflect that this is an aging community. They're not going to have a whole lot of new people, and the new people that they will have, they don't want to really chase away. So there's that. I lost my video here. That's all right. So yeah, it's very cool that what they're doing, and it's definitely worth checking out. So this gets us to our DCL. I did not really prepare this part, so we're gonna have to do this on the fly here.
Don't worry, I got it. It's 2 significant events have occurred over the course of I'll label the winter break, the traditional separation of during the holidays. We have Behemoth completing his gold demotion challenge. He was able to ward off gold from pushing him down into silver. But he did much better this time, receiving a net of plus 11 points against some excellent pilots. And the marquee match, I believe, was mentioned in a previous podcast, 20-15 against Jedi Luke and Nysa. And it's good to see that he was able to retain that competently rather than just kind of squeaking in, demonstrating that, hey, just because I've been brave enough to play some of these other silver pilots, that it doesn't mean I don't know how to hang with you guys. So applause to Behemoth, and he even got recognition from the participants on the DCL for end of season accolades and the season props for doing so not once but twice. So congratulations, Behemoth, you've earned it.
Absolutely.
And the other major highlight would be Mark 392 over Jedi Luke, 20-16 in Nysa X2. The score was tied at 18-18.
Was it X2?
Yes, it was X2.
Oh man.
And, yeah, X1 is enough to make my nose bleed, but it sounds like it was an absolute screamer of a match. And there is a demo. We'll be happy to put that demo in to our usual list of links.
Very cool.
And there is even a war journal. We'll also toss that link in there. Excellent show up by those two. It's a shame that Mark 392 has retired from Gold. Well, he's retired from the DCL for what we are being assured is a temporary venture. He will be stepping away for a bit. And we look forward to having him back, but we know that he's going to be just as deadly when he comes back.
Walker,
There will
get
not
back
be a-
here.
Yeah.
Put your shirt back on, sit down, and play some Descent.
Well, he's going to come back with a gigantic pyro tattoo on his chest.
Probably. Showing it off
Who
in
knows
his
where that guy
videos.
walks into? But that pretty much wraps it up for the DCL. Other than hey, it's the
Nope.
start of a new season. It's we're moving. They're moving to 4-month seasons now. So the idea is have 3 seasons throughout the year. So if you are just kind of waiting for that, when should I join? When should I join? Now is an excellent time.
Absolutely. The other things that I wanted to point out with the DCL, of course, Jedi Luke finished the season at number 1. That was not assured because that match that we mentioned, the 20-16, that gave Mark number 1. But Jedi did bring it back and retain the number 1 spot just a day and a half before the ladder got switched over to early 2016. So he retains the top gold spot. Of course, our good friend here, Morphod, got
Hello
the
there.
top silver spot for the season. Congratulations for that.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes. And
I hear that there's
still,
somebody who has
you're still
top-
defending. You're still defending that fusion trophy like a beast. That's all I gotta say. It's just that's the scores you're putting up are ridiculous. For sure.
Well, these people, they think they can tango with me, and I believe the top bronze is our very own Ronckley here.
Yeah.
Who
I got 3 trophies to go with it. I almost had 4.
yes.
I almost had 4.
He's got the blind trophy, he's got the fusion trophy, and he's got the X4 trophy.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
but-
almost had the dogfighting trophy. In fact, I had it in my hands.
What happened?
I don't remember. Was it Swarthy that wanted to play me in there? Not Swarthy.
Rooster?
Not Rooster. No, he's Skywarp. It was Skywarp. Skywarp played a few games with me, and then the third game's like, "Well, can we do like a dogfighting level?" I said, "Well, let's see. The dogfighting trophy's available. Let's play for it." And I beat him like 20-9 or something like that. And at the end of the game, I get back into the lobby, and Rooster61 is there, and he's like, "Hey, you want to play a DCL?" I'm like, "Sure. What do you want to do?" He's like, "Well, we could do a dogfighting match." Like, I just did one. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I see you have the trophy. Let's play for it." And we ended up doing this epic 30-28 game.
Oh dear, I think that was the longest one for the season.
Nope.
or
No, the
second-
longest one
second
for the
one?
season was the longest one ever. This
Oh.
one actually ties for the 5th longest though. Only 7 games have gone to 30. So, but I mean, it was a dogfighting one, so it was over fairly quick. Definitely nowhere near my longest by time, which that goes to my game versus P-Funk. That was
Big surprise there.
yeah. So
Well, either way, it sounds like you finished. You did very well switching over to a new controller for the season, and you climbed right back up to a competitive top bronze
Yep.
and defended it. So,
and I got
a
top bronze
success-
the way that bronze gets top bronze by
by
defeating a silver
beating
pilot.
somebody's silver. Well,
So-
somebody did that to me at silver, so
Yeah. So yeah,
Oh.
it's pretty good, pretty cool. Hoping to get back to silver next season. So I think
Well,
that
well, friend, I wish you the very best, and I wish all of our listeners on the DCL a good and successful new season. As long as you don't beat me.
we'll see how that works. All right. So I believe that does it for the DCL. Of course, our highlight of the week we just mentioned, Mark 392 defeating Jedi Luke in NISA X2 20-16. We'll include a demo of that in the show notes. Nothing of interest in the game releases. Of course, it's been an awfully quiet few weeks with the holidays, so not a whole lot going on.
Looking forward to having the Descent Underground guys back with us.
Absolutely. They have been streaming. They have been playing the game. They've been playing the heck out of the game. So definitely look forward to them getting back in the saddle, getting the Wingman's Hangar going, and we'll be off and running.
All right. Well, in that case, I think that's about going to wrap up the show here, folks. If you enjoyed the show, if you hated the show, if you just want to hear us talk about what you have to say on the show, feel free to contact us. As a call for submissions. Email us at emails@selfdestructsequence.org or get in touch with us on Facebook, Twitch, which is SDS Podcast, Twitter, which is SDS_activated, or contact us through selfdestructsequence.org. And please leave a note if you wish to remain anonymous in your contribution.
And also, we are attempting to try to get these things going so at a regular time here. So 5:30 Eastern on Saturday is what we're aiming for. If that changes, you can check out any of those channels, and we'll let you know when that. If we have an alternative date and time, we'll be sure to relay that along. If you want to get back into the game, of course, the Descent Champions have just updated their new player page. If you go to descentchampions.org/new_player.php, you can check out how you can get back into Descent and start playing. Of course, we mentioned the Descent Rangers earlier. Great community. You can find a whole lot of pickup games. I mean, they've been playing a lot over the holidays, so definitely check them out. And definitely watch Facebook and Twitter for our next stream. And I think that will just about do it. For Self-Destruct Sequence, I'm Ronkley.
And I'm Morfod.
And we'll see you next time.